Your screen on if you can. Great, thank you, everyone. Well, it's 6:31 and I'm going to start the meeting if everybody's ready. It appears we have a quorum at this point. And I'm hoping that Don figures out his new computer and has the opportunity to join us again. Anyway, welcome to the Environmental Board meeting for January 12th, 2022. I'm Nancy Davidson, and I am the chair of the committee, and or the board, excuse me, and I'm going to give a little bit of introduction before we get into our agenda. Due to the virtual format of today's meeting, I'd like to start by providing some guidelines. We have participants attending by computer and others who may be attending by phone. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking. If you're having technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device such as a smartphone or tablet, or please use the call-in information in the meeting invite to call into the meeting. At this point, we're going to move on to our first item, and that is attendance. We'll now begin by taking a roll call of those board members in attendance. Please unmute and say here when Stacy calls your name.
All right, thanks, Nancy. Tom Anderson.
Here.
Surya Pragada.
Here.
Nancy Davidson.
Here.
Jamie Finch.
Here.
Cameron Fisher, we have an excused absence, and Rishi Hazra, we have an excused absence. Dan Heinz.
Here.
Laura Labeco.
Here.
Danny Maiden. Don McWilliams.
We see you, Dawn.
All right. And Dawn, I can send you a call-in number too. I'll try doing that in a minute. Ann Newcomb.
Here.
And Janet Wall.
Here.
Great, thank you. And if I mispronounced any of your names, I apologize, and I'll please let me know, and we can work through that for the next meeting.
Okay, as a reminder for each of the board members, if you wish to speak, please send a chat to all panelists, and you may have to hit that in the chat menu so that it goes to all of us. And type question or comment, and then I will try and keep up on that and acknowledge you as needed. Please do not put any substantive comments in the chat. I don't think we have anyone on the phone, but we may be having Don join us that way. So if you are on the phone, you can press *3 to raise your hand and you'll get called on, probably by Stacy. She'll let me know you're there. At this point, we're going to move on to approval of the minutes. And I'd like to know if there are any comments on the meeting minutes for November 10th, 2021. Any comments or input on that? Please indicate in the chat box. Seeing none, those minutes are approved. Moving on to the minutes for the December 8th, 2021 meeting. Is there any comments or changes or modifications required for those minutes? Seeing no comments at this point, those minutes are also approved. We're moving on to agenda item number 3, which is the public comments, and I'd like to provide a few comments before we begin to take those. Public comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions we make. For members of the public joining us, welcome. If there's anyone in the meeting now who would like to make public comments, please raise your virtual hand. To do this, if you're on the phone, press *3. If you have joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon. This varies by device. One option may be to go to the participant panel and select your name and then choose Raise Hand. It also may be located under the Reactions menu or More menu. At this point, I'll turn to Stacy and see if we have anybody that wishes to comment. But before you do, when you're recognized, please unmute your microphone. State your name, address, and relationship to the city. Are you a resident, property owner, business owner? Speak clearly and pause frequently, And please limit your comments to 5 minutes. And just a reminder, please mute your microphone when you're done. If you do not respond after your name or phone number is called, or if your connection is lost unexpectedly, the meeting will need to proceed. You are encouraged to rejoin the meeting if able, and we'll try and get back to you. So with that, Stacy, I turn it to you to see if we have anybody wishing to comment at this time.
Thank you, Nancy. We do have one member of the public on the phone, but I've not received any messages, and I do not see a hand raised that they'd like to speak. So please, if you would, you can go ahead and send the host a message. We did receive one comment in writing, Nancy, that did go out to the entire environmental board. That's the only comment I received in writing.
Great. And hopefully you've all had the opportunity to review the comment that we received in writing, and I suspect that Stacy will provide a response for the board at some point. So any other, did they raise their hands, the person that's attending on the phone?
I do not see that.
Okay, at this point, we're going to move on past the public comment period, but if you're really interested, please let us know. And we're going to move on to agenda item number 4. And that is a discussion of the 2022 work plan and board schedule. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy again.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. I'm just going to give myself here, make sure I have everything up. All right. Well, thank you all. Very excited to be meeting with you all tonight. Please do bear with me as I work through any technical challenges, but really appreciate the opportunity to be speaking with you all tonight and presenting a draft work plan as well as the board schedule. So before we launch into the proposed work plan and the questions that I'd like to discuss with the board tonight, I did want to take just a few minutes to talk through some thoughts and considerations that I've been hearing my first couple of weeks on the job. Tonight, I'll be seeking your input on priority actions for ICAP implementation that we can advance in 2022. As you know, there are a lot of actions in the ICAP. Many of those are slated for early action and were intended to be implemented within the first 2 years. With limited staff and resources, I wanted to put forward some priorities on what might be feasible this year, but that also could have some real beneficial impacts. So I've been meeting with members of council and staff and mayor to really understand what their priorities are. Tonight's the opportunity to really hear about your priorities. What I have been hearing is they want to see implementation. They want to see some big wins this year. And they also want tracking and transparency. So based on what I have been hearing, as well as the opportunities that I saw within the ICAP, I'm proposing this draft work plan for you. The next meeting in February, our plan is to be talking about the longer term work plan, how we see implementation happening over the next couple of years, as well as where community and board engagement fits in. But tonight we really are focusing on just this next year and really wanting to understand if what's being proposed aligns with your priorities. So first, I'll be touching on the proposed 2022 work plan for ICAP implementation, and then after that, we'll be looking at the board schedule and how that aligns with the implementation plan as well as your other priorities. Great. So first, just to touch base on the ICAP implementation work plan for the year. So I'm going to walk through a quick summary of what was provided to you in the board memo. That was in attachment A. And this slide presents just a general overview of the categories of work as I see them for the next year. So the first category is around municipal operations. So these are items such as working on green building requirements, enhancing opportunities for renewable energy, and preparing for transition to an EV fleet. The next category of work is around a vulnerability assessment. This was identified as an early action in the ICAP And this year, there's a great opportunity to work through the vulnerability assessment, as we will also be updating our emergency comprehensive plan. With a lot of the recent events, the heat dome, the flooding, other related events, I feel like there's a great opportunity to really look at where is our city most vulnerable to different extreme weather events and which populations are most at risk, and then identify some specific actions the community can take. The next category of work is probably the largest. This is around energy efficiency incentives. This would be both for new construction as well as existing buildings. There are a lot of incentive opportunities available that we would want to promote within our community. And then there's also some things that we can do within the city to really promote greener building. The fourth category is some community campaigns that are underway. You may have heard about these a bit last fall. The first one is a community climate challenge. This will be a partnership with the other Eastside cities. And it will really be focused on individuals and households and what actions they can take, from those that are very simple to much more complex for reducing their carbon footprints. We are also planning to move forward with a heat pump campaign that is also in collaboration with a number of other Eastside cities. And this will operate somewhat similar to the Solarize campaign, where there'd be an incentive to move forward with electric heat pump, benefits from a group purchase, and promotion of incentives. There's a few hiccups happening with this campaign right now that we're trying to work through, but I hope to bring you more on that at our next meeting. I'm also exploring opportunities for outreach and education on waste management through our existing contract with Recology, but further discussions are happening with our Public Works department on what we can do this year. And then the last category of work is around tracking and reporting on the implementation plan. I think we heard a lot about wanting transparency around the plan and what is happening. So over the next couple of months, my plan is to work with the board to advance the metrics associated with each of the actions in the plan, and then to develop a dashboard where folks can come and see what we're working on, where we're making progress, and maybe where even the barriers are that we need to work through to get an action implemented. We'll also be working to update our website in the near term, just to get out some more information around the ICAP and community engagement. There's a number of other items that we might include in the work this year, but those conversations haven't advanced very far, but are definitely on my mind. Things like working more closely with the school district, looking at more opportunities for carbon sequestration, sustainable purchasing, improved food waste policies. So those are very much in the thought for the next year, but just not sure how much we'll be able to advance them. So that is kind of a high-level snapshot of what I envision for this year. So I am most interested in hearing what the board thinks about this plan for early implementation of the ICAP. And that's the first question, and just seeing if it really aligns with your understanding of what was meant to be included for early implementation. And then the second question being if there are other actions from the ICAP that you want to prioritize for 2022. So I will pause there and hand it back over to Nancy for discussion with the board.
Thank you, Stacy. So she's asked us a couple of questions, and I'm looking for people to comment. And I'll start off with my first one. I'll kind of throw something to you, Stacy. What kind of opportunities, it seems to me we should track where we're finding the best partnerships. So you're talking about waste management. I mean, if we can identify partners that are helping us to be successful, such as we heard comments from Raleigh Properties, the school district, maybe PSE, REI's in town as well. I think tracking our partnerships and people that are buying into this and helping this ICAP be successful, even if it's kind of in a small way, I think it really will help us, bring more people to the table, like the chamber or somebody like that. So that's one thing that I would like to do, is to track the community and the agencies around us that are helping us. If it's Costco, whatever, but I think we need to show the wins and announce. And I think a group that I see very successful at that is the Chamber of Commerce and how they do Salmon Days. I don't know if you've seen that, but they really bring a lot of partners to the table. And I think for us to be successful with this, we need to bring more partners, because clearly the city does not have the resources nor the ability to do this without those partners. That's my feedback.
Great.
And I'm going to turn it over to Stacy or Jamie. Sorry, Jamie. Go ahead.
Thanks, Nancy. Jamie speaking. I had a couple of questions. One of the things that was called out in the implementation plan is the wedge analysis tool from K4C. I didn't see that clearly called out in the materials, and how that would be, or when we expected that to be available and how that would be used this year, if at all. Can you share a little bit about your expectations or understandings around that tool and its availability and use this year?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I think, are you referring to the countywide greenhouse gas inventory that K4C will be leading?
No, I thought in the implementation plan, let me read, there was mention of that a tool is going to be made available that would help us quantify the impact of these actions. And I'm reading more into that than what it actually is, but.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to dig back through that. I can look at my notes from Megan too. I'm not sure what that's referring to. I do know that there's going to be a county-led process this year that we'll be able to build off of for our own greenhouse gas inventory, but it sounds like maybe that's not quite what you're speaking to. So let me look back at that, see if I can find out more information and bring it to a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you'll find it in the implementation part. The other question I had was around, based on how we've done our greenhouse gas, basically, what's the right term? Inventory. Our consumption is not really included, like the upstream impacts of the goods that people consume in the city of Issaquah are not included. I was curious if you had any early thoughts on how that would be communicated and how that might be incorporated into communications with citizens.
No, I haven't thought about that. I'd be interested to hear more about whether or not that came into conversations in the development of the ICAP, or if we weren't quite there yet, I need to further explore that.
Thanks. I think in terms of quick feedback, I think the areas that I really like is that we are focusing on really getting a foundation of trying to track and be able to communicate and provide transparency. That's a really important first step. So appreciate the efforts to do those things. That I think if there's other ways to kind of quantify the impact more precisely or get a better sense, that would be something that, even if that wedge tool isn't the right thing, or if I'm misinterpreting what it is, that's an area that I'd love, so that we can better understand what we should be prioritizing in the future based on what can have the greatest impact. So it's still an area that I'm a little bit unclear on in the current format. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It sounds like Brianna might have some more information, so I'll follow up with her and we'll bring that back to the board at the next meeting.
Okay, it appears we have a comment from Anne. Anne, go ahead, please.
Hey, thanks, Nancy. So I wanted to support Nancy on the partners, building the partners and seeing where we can help each other out, not just within the city, but also potentially other cities that maybe have a program that they've already built, that we could piggyback on or, get good ideas from. And then legislatively, there's a lot going on right now, a lot of important things with legislatively and with Washington Commerce. And so if we could be commenting as a city on a lot of those things that are going to make everything else easier for us, I think, including the clean energy implementation plan that's going on right now, and the comments to the UTC end, I think, on March 3rd or 4th. And then also partnering with the schools, sustainability, any schools or their sustainability teams, to see what we can do, especially to see if we can get kids to ride the bus and carpool. Thanks.
Thanks, Tam.
Thanks, Anne. Tom Anderson has some comments. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, thank you. Tom Anderson speaking. Well, Jamie's comments involving some of the King County stuff there just reminded me of that King County, what do they call it? Climate Action Toolkit or something like that. And so I didn't do my homework here and come ready, but it just reminded me when I did look at it there was a nice table of all the cities in King County and things that they have done or are planning on doing in the near term. And so are we aligned with the King County plan, and are we glaringly behind on any of those check marks or anything? So I don't recall that is the case, but I'm just wondering whether we're in sync with the overall county plan and in sync with our sister cities in the county on various aspects of the near-term implementation. So something I'm wondering about. Let's see, I had another comment on campaign related to waste reduction. I mean, that's left a bit vague there. Are we working with Cleanscapes on something more specific that they can do to kind of up the ante on this? It seems like this is something that, in terms of partnering, they should be the driver of this sort of thing, but we need to hold their feet to the fire on something that this is important to us. And as we think ahead to our next contract, well, help us deliver on these sorts of goals to make us feel good about re-upping our contract with Cleanscapes. So that's an area that I think waste management is something that we should be able to make measurable improvements on without a huge investment, in that it's largely driven by human behavior, and human behavior can be altered through teaching, and that's a fairly low cost thing compared to retrofitting buildings, for example. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Tom. I see that Laura has a comment. Laura, go ahead, please.
Hi, this is Laura. First of all, thanks for organizing all this. It's exciting to see the action plan actually coming to life. So now we enter the messy part of how to make ideas reality. I think
Excuse me, Laura, can
yes.
you turn your screen on by any chance?
I'm on my phone and I don't think I can handle it.
All right, thanks. That's okay.
I can dial back in a bit, but right now I don't think I can do it. I like the priorities. I'm a little confused about how we're prioritizing which ones and why, and I think it would be helpful to define that more. It sounds like you're doing it, but almost maybe to have a score of like the impact versus the feasibility of it working. I think Nancy's idea about doing the community is, or who our community partners are, is a really good point for targeting that. So expressing why we're choosing these is helpful for the teaching or for the tracking and reporting. I'm just a little, otherwise I feel like it's sort of like a buckshot approach, which I think could be difficult. So my first thought is just, why are we doing which and what do we expect to get out of it? It's almost like I would make the tracking and reporting more of a priority over municipal operations, because it seems like once we have some sort of metric framework to help us identify what we're doing. Also, I know that the city is already doing a lot without it. Second comment is, we talked about this before, and this is not what we are appointed for, but I do think at some point soon, it would be helpful to assign the board to different initiatives to say that we are representing and actually helping with the implementation. I think long-term, the city would be better served with having advocates who are actually helping translate the climate action plan to the community. So maybe, not as much board meetings, but also we go out and do things. So as part, hitting the road with that, I think that is an interesting consideration to help us be those partners for these initiatives. That's it.
Thanks, Laura. I think Stacy wanted to weigh in and respond to some of the comments from Tom. So go ahead, Stacy.
Great. Yeah, just briefly, thanks, Tom, for your comments. The King County Toolkit and how we align with other cities, that's a great question and something we can kind of look at more closely. We are trying to, as much as possible, partner with cities on projects or campaigns or share resources so that if someone's developed code that we think will be beneficial, and sharing those resources, as well as ideas such as a early adopters incentive, that partnership that Bellevue just developed to help folks with the clean buildings. I'm going to be talking to them tomorrow to see if that might be something we can replicate, for example. So we are trying to share resources as much as possible. How we kind of measure up to those other cities, I think that you're getting to, we can take a look at that toolkit and kind of see where we are either ahead or behind or in line. And then I just did want to comment on the waste reduction. Great comments there, thank you. We do have some funds in place as I understand, for waste outreach, as well as it's within our current contract. So we're looking at what we might be able to do this year, but definitely a strong consideration for that next contract as well. But we're going to try and move forward with some work there based on what we already have within those contracts. So thank you for those comments. Just wanted to follow up on them.
Okay, before I turn it over to Jamie, I know he has another question, but I would also like to stress just one other comment to focus on municipal operations. When we had the storm and surface water management plan in front of us, they really hadn't thought about how the climate action plan would tie into it in terms of vehicles or equipment they might purchase, tools and systems, staffing, that type of thing. And there's going to be other plans. I know Parks is working on their strategic plan. Those are set out for 6 or 8 years. If we want an opportunity to influence them to do something to help with climate action, to change the way they do business, it's time to do it this year and not put that off. And my concern is that these will get to the city council and get adopted without even that climate overview. So my suggestion is, and I think you have a really interesting group of people that have touched a lot of different pieces of these puzzles that could give input to these departments very successfully if we could put them on the agenda, so that they think about what they can do to help us with this climate action plan and benefit it. So I think that's just my suggestion. I know the wastewater master plan is going as well, and I assume the water one, and they are all big energy users. So that would be my comment and feedback to you. We need to get them in front of either this board or have the council provide that overview of, hey, you guys need to do things differently than you're doing now. Just a bit of feedback. With that, I'll turn it over to Jamie for his question.
Thanks, Nancy. Jamie speaking. And I would just, first of all, echo what Nancy said, and I think Title 18 as well, just ensuring that these things that are on the front burner right now, how do we make sure that those things don't end up passing us by before everything that we need for this ICAP to be successful is included there. So the question that I had, and Tom's question actually brought this to mind, was I was curious what sort of knowledge sharing, I don't know if there's a community or across cities there are within King County or more broadly for people in your role or people implementing climate action plans. Is there a existing forum for knowledge sharing?
Yeah, I think multiple ones. I'm finding over the last few weeks, there's K4C, obviously, and then there's this East Side City collaborative. I don't know how much Megan had shared about that, but that's Kirkland, Mercer Island, Bellevue, Issaquah, and Redmond. And then there is also the Puget Sound. I think they've changed their name a bit, but the Puget Sound Climate Collaborative that's more focused on preparedness. And so they're going to be talking about things such as the comprehensive plan updates and how to incorporate more resiliency preparedness into those and other big topics. They are tracking the legislative agenda closely. And then the other group I'm also tied into is the Urban Sustainability Director Network. That's nationwide, but it's a great place to go in, put in questions, see what other people have done. People are sharing documents. I just shared actually the documents for this board. Someone else is considering setting up an environmental or sustainability board. So that is a great go-to resource to see what's happening around the country and to look first for policies, codes, or ideas if it doesn't exist within our region. So does that give you a bit of a sense, Jamie? I welcome if folks know of other groups, welcome ideas on them if I can tap in.
Thanks. Yeah, that answered my question. I mean, I just think that especially at this stage of where we're at, the more we can learn from people that have already done it, know the things to avoid, best practices, and continue to share after we learn about what works for us. That just seems like a huge opportunity. Getting back to that, how do we really make sure that we have a firm foundation, that the more we can engage, I mean, that's kind of into the partnership piece, but specifically people doing exactly what we're trying to do, or having done what we're trying to do, seems like there's a lot of value there. So thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Thank you, Stacy. With that, I'm seeing no other questions or comments. Anybody else want to weigh in at this point in time? Stacy, did you get your questions answered or get the feedback that you were looking for at this point?
Absolutely. Yeah, really great feedback. Thank you. I will take that and incorporate into an updated work plan. I'll also wait to hear a bit on the discussion with the board schedule and see how that might influence the work plan, but plan to make those adjustments for the focus for this year. And then we'll also follow up with folks on some of the specific questions and comments.
Great. Thank you, Stacy.
Great.
Okay, continue on.
All right, and thank you. I feel like I'm going to be speaking a lot tonight, which may not be normal, but really appreciate this opportunity for feedback. So now I wanted to turn the discussion to the proposed board schedule for 2022, and really want to see how the proposed schedule aligns with both what we just talked about, those priorities for implementation, as well as the other priorities that the board has for this year. So before moving into the summary of what was included in the packet, I did just want to share a couple of thoughts from the conversations I've been having over the last few weeks. The first one was that our administration and electeds were very impressed with the board report and the amount of work that this board covered in its first year. They also really look to the comments that folks provided in the survey on process improvements, and really that's something I'm going to really take to heart and consider with each of the meetings, as well as have tried to consider in our work planning. They also just wanted me to reiterate that the role of this advisory board, you all carry really substantial weight with council with your feedback. And I and they are also really looking to help you advise on ICAP implementation. One thing I did want to just note, based on the feedback from the survey and at the December meeting, and something I've tried to consider when developing the work plan for the year, is cutting back on presentation time and really trying to open up more time for discussion. One of the ways we're talking about doing this is not reviewing the materials that we've provided in advance in depth, but really assuming folks have had time to look at the meeting packet, and then just providing a brief summary with a presentation and moving on quickly to discussion. I know that folks are very busy and not everyone may have time to look at materials ahead of the meeting, so that's completely understandable, and just let us know if that's the case. But do know that's really my hope going forward, is kind of very brief presentations and then turning it over to comments and questions. So with that quick introduction, I'll just move on to the summary of the board schedule. This is in a lot more detail in attachment 2 of the packet. I really see this as a living document in some ways too, where we can make adjustments based on things that are more timely or become a priority. So as I mentioned, I tried to take into account the feedback on the survey, priorities for the year, need to engage in other processes that are happening within the city. Also really tried to minimize how many topics are at each meeting so that we can have that focused discussion. So a brief summary here is the first quarter focusing on the ICAP planning like we're doing today and likely at our February meeting, if input on different planning processes that are happening within the city and Title 18 as well. Second quarter would be working through the ICAP metrics, starting to talk about incentives, potential policies for energy efficiency in buildings, possibly getting into some natural environment, parks, transportation related items. You'll see a couple of the summer meetings included a lot of potential topics, and we'll see what's timely there. Third quarter, revisiting and updates on Title 18. I think there'll also be some opportunities for solid waste, waste management discussions here. And then in the fourth quarter, updates on greenhouse gas inventories, preparation for our own inventory, possibly getting into sustainable purchasing if we've been able to advance that, looking at a climate vulnerability study if we've been able to advance that, and then starting to work through our priorities for the next year. One thing I did want to just note is that at each meeting, my plan is to provide in the staff report just a brief update on where we are on ICAP implementation if that's not one of the topics being discussed that particular evening. So now I wanted to turn it back over to you with these two questions. The first is that, do you see this schedule aligning with some of the priorities we just discussed for ICAP implementation? And the second question is, are there other priority topics that you don't see in that more detailed schedule in the packet that you want to make sure we save some room for and include in 2022?
Thank you, Stacy. And with that,
Yeah.
are there any comments from the board or feedback that you'd like to provide Stacy on either the first or second topic or question she raised? Jamie, please go ahead.
Thanks, Nancy. Jamie speaking. And Stacy, this relates to the question I asked earlier today, or yesterday maybe, about Title 16 building codes. It would be great to figure out, as opposed to Title 18, where it was basically like, we'd never discussed Title 18 and then we're in a meeting like with trying to go in the weeds on Title 18. It would be great if we could get out in front of that, knowing that that's coming, and getting, Minnie did a really great, not the first time around, but the second time around, she did a great summary of Title 18. And I don't know if it would be Minnie, but someone coming and helping us just get like a holistic understanding of that body of code and how that might relate to our discussion items, before we're just like in rapid fire questioning would be really awesome. So that's my feedback.
Great, thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie. Dan, you have some comment?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Dan Hintz here. The first part of it is, Jamie, you just kind of nailed exactly what I was thinking. I was a little concerned seeing that the only Title 18 on the tentative or proposed schedule for this year is a joint meeting. I think, yeah, just kind of reiterate what Jamie's saying, a little bit more context, or if there's specific areas of it. I know there's a lot of interest around critical areas, a lot of interest around tree retention and different codes around canopy in the city. So yeah, just expressing a little bit of hesitance around that being the only touch point for that. I would say even a lesser extent, but kind of a similar feeling on the storm and surface water planning too. It looks like maybe right now that is just the month before Title 18 in March. So I think those are both such big elements, and kind of to the previous part of the discussion with Jamie and Nancy, you know, how we can ensure that those are really integrated with ICAP too, and some of the goals there. So would call both those out. Those are big things. I'd say something that I'm very excited about. Oh gosh, I'm losing it right now. But on some of the natural areas, parks, trails, connectivity, wildlife corridors, I think that's fantastic. One thing I'd love to learn more about or see where the city's at is around land acquisitions, and where some of the goals might be there as it relates to all those things: recreation, habitat, flood management, all those things that I think Issaquah has a great history of, and would like to see continue. So that's just kind of one more, a little bit more specific topic I'd be curious to dive into if there's time.
Thank you, Dan. I would like to echo some of Dan's comments. I think Title 18 is going to kind of come to a head with the City Council this year, and I think it really is going to tie into ICAP pretty heavily and going to get a lot of feedback. So we need to make sure that that becomes a priority for this board as it moves forward, so that we have provided our input in a timely manner to the City Council. Occasionally, we didn't have that opportunity. And we have a different perspective than the Planning Policy Commission. I know at times they have brought us as a joint meeting, and we look at things, I think, a little differently than they do. We have a different purpose and goal, and I think that's important. My second comment is, throughout last year, I'm still interested in seeing the strategic plan for the Parks Department. I think it has a huge piece to this, and so far we have not been able to get that to this board. And it troubles me that we haven't brought it to the board. I think we need to have an understanding, since they are dealing with canopy issues. They are tied to the stormwater master plan. I just think an understanding of what they're doing there, so that we see how it ties into Title 18 and the ICAP and these other things. It feels like a piece that's really missing out of the overall agenda for what the environmental board's trying to do. I know there's a parks board, I understand that completely, but we have a different mission than them. And I think it would be very helpful to get them on our agenda as soon as we can. So at least we have an understanding of what they're trying to accomplish and where they're going, so we don't get surprised when their product comes out and we say, well, why didn't you think about this? And what happened with that? And it's really hard to come late to the game on some of those things. And I feel like we're getting to that point with the park strategic plan. Those are my two pieces of feedback. I think, Laura, have I called on you? Go ahead, Laura.
You have not. Hello. I'm not sure. My feedback, I'm looking at the practicalities of the schedule, but I do feel a little hesitant that when you say that the board wants some big wins, that we're not really diving into greenhouse gas measures until the end of the year. I know that we're building up those measurements, but it seems like the order could be a little, again, a little switched perhaps. I feel like I can say this in a concise way. but maybe zeroing in on that sooner. Like I know that I think that the wastewater and the stormwater is just because the plans are in progress. But again, I would love to see us giving you more input on like the community goals and the metrics and some greenhouse gas emissions sooner if possible. And my other question was just what support does the city need from us? I'm assuming that's built in, but I want to make sure that we're giving you what you need to implement these as quickly as possible. So if there are specific questions that you're wanting some insights in, that you're tapping us as soon as possible for those.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Jamie, you have a question?
Yeah, and I don't know, Stacy, if you'll know this off the top of your head, but is 2023 when there's going to be a new capital improvement plan? Isn't it every 2
Good
years?
question. I don't know. I will need to check on that. I can find out.
Okay. That's just something that
Mm-hmm.
I know the city is looking for different ways for boards to engage with it. And I think it might be every 2 years. And I think we did it 2021. So I would think it'd be coming in 2023. And I do think that that's something that we should probably get out in front of and figure out how the board best engages on the CIP, future instances of the CIP. So I think, I would love to hear back once you get that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great.
Janet, I understand you have a question? Janet? Janet, you might want to unmute your microphone. There you go.
Hello. I have one of my issues, and thank you, Dan, for bringing it up, is ascertaining the wildlife corridors through the city and making sure that we're not putting barriers up. I was kind of concerned when they were putting all the barriers along I-90 that will be a problem of forcing wildlife to cross or making it restricted in some areas. And the other issue is having to do with solid waste. One of the things that I do is pick up the litter that's along our street. And it's really hard when cans and bottles are just packed with dirt. So just some awareness of not throwing litter in the first place. I think I'd like them to bring back the Indian that was disturbed by all the litter along roadsides and trails. So anyway.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? It looks like Jamie has another comment. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking of things not all at once. One topic that it would be great to get an update on at some point, and I think Dan may have mentioned this in a previous meeting, is just the 6 PPD and how, first of all, helping educate us, but if there are any updates on how the city's thinking about mitigation or just its perspective. I know that's been something that's been voiced in some of our meetings related to rivers and streams in the past, and so it would be great to get an update. I don't think that's a full meeting, but at some point getting an update on if there's any new information that the city has received.
With that, I'm not seeing a lot of other comments or feedback, but I would like to pose a question to the board. Stacy and I were talking the last couple of days, and one of the things that she's trying to figure out is how to best utilize the board. And so as we look at our 2022 schedule, it would be helpful if you could identify where you feel your expertise and interests best align. She's trying to figure out what our strengths are and who she can turn to for questions, assistance, and I think that she really hasn't been introduced to us. We talked about doing that tonight, but it would be helpful to do that when the board turns over in May, if it does at all. And so if we could have you guys come up and kind of say, where can you best help Stacy, or based on your expertise, I think it would really help her, because she does not know this board very well. So I think she's trying to get a little bit of an introduction, and I would ask you all to weigh in on this, but I'm not going to call on you. So who would like to start for me? I guess I would start. Just put myself out there. Stacy, I've worked in government operations for 35 years, so I have a strong public works and background, and have also been involved as an elected official in the past. So I have both of those in my skill mix. I understand budgets, CIPs, and all of that very well, and I understand the technical issues and the policy issues. So I've kind of got a big picture on all of this, but I'm fortunate to be retired, so I am happy to help you in any way you need. That's my comment. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to who's next?
Dawn. Looks like
I'm
Dawn's mic's
calling
working.
Dawn because Dawn's got his mic working now, and so Dawn gets to go now.
I think so. Is it working?
Yeah, it is. Great.
Yep.
All right. I finally figured it out. Just had to get the right setting. So I've been listening. Thank you. I agree with everything you guys say. One thing I'd like to throw in there real quick before I tell you about me is, as we move forward, I really like the idea of hearing from the Parks Department on what their planning efforts are, and then checking in on the CIP. I've been doing some research online while we've been talking, and there's a lot there, and probably more than we can go through in one meeting, but it'd be nice just to have them introduce themselves to us so we're on the same page. My background, I'm 20 years in local government. My specialty is stormwater, water quality. I'm involved in a ton of regional groups on the stormwater out front. You asked about 6 PPD there. If you want in touch with those folks, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to put you in touch with the leads of those groups and get them to come talk to us. Similar to Nancy, I have a lot of experience in CIP planning, project planning, the inner workings of government. So feel free to ping me for anything you need.
Great. Dan, go ahead.
Great. Yeah, Dan here, and Stacy, very excited to work with you this year. And yeah, I'm excited to build these kind of relationships and knowledge here. But I've been working the past 6 years with the Mountain Sound Greenway Trust, and we partner a lot with the city on all sorts of things. But essentially, in the past, it has been land acquisitions, habitat restoration, trails and recreation, community engagement. My specific role is our restoration project manager, so restoration ecology, and obviously a lot of that ties to salmon recovery, which I believe you have a background in too, which is really exciting. Floodplain design, obviously botany, ecology, forestry. So, but the community engagement parts of it are something I'm very passionate about too. So working with people on the ground, getting them engaged and educated on some of these issues too. So yeah, very excited to work with you.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Jamie.
Thanks, Nancy. My background is really, in a nutshell, go-to-market strategy for digital businesses. And so I think as we think about how we start bringing some of the ICAP community engagement to life, that could be an area that I might be able to provide some assistance. I also have a finance background, more of a corporate finance background. As we think about CIP, as well as all the time I've spent on the capital finance task force, that's an area that I'm starting to get deeper on. So, and then I'm really passionate about what we're doing with the ICAP. So can't say that I have a lot of expertise, but really a lot of desire to learn, and a lot of passion about what we're doing and what we can do.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. Laura.
Hi.
Stacy, welcome. My background is right now I'm actually finishing up grad school in landscape architecture, focusing on ecology and urban design. My background before that, though, I worked for a while in architecture consulting and overall business strategy. So I've done a lot of marketing and messaging. So if you need help with like messaging development or testing and iterative planning, I've done a lot of that. And then again, just shaping messages for community and working with a variety of different businesses. But right now I'm doing landscape architecture.
Thank you, Laura. Janet, please go ahead. Janet? Janet, you might have to unmute your microphone.
Janet, I'll try unmuting you from my end. The warning, I'll be doing that. See if that works. You're unmuted.
All right.
There she is.
My background is as a fishery biologist, working for National Marine Fishery Service observer program. And now that I'm retired, I'm mostly focusing on habitat restoration, which I think Dan mentioned as well, which is the removal of invasive plants. I target tansy ragwort, which is required to be removed. And but I also do ivy, holly, and blackberries, and various other natives. And I've been a steward with the Washington Native Plant Society, so I'm interested in planting native plants.
Great, thank you, Janet. Anne, would you like to share your interest too?
Janet is definitely our go-to gal when it comes to plants in Issaquah. Thanks, Janet. Hey, Stacy. So I retired from the Issaquah post office a couple of years ago after working there for 35, 36 years and delivering mail. I've been passionate about climate change and how to help for quite a few years. And I have worked with the Sierra Club and now a different group to, at first it was to move away from coal, and now working with the Clean Energy Implementation Plan and CETA, and so I guess I know a bit about that, and working with the UTC. And here in Issaquah, I volunteer as for the Issaquah Alps Trails Club, and am vice president, I guess. And we would definitely like to help any way we can with communicating to the public, how we can help with the ICAP plan, especially where it overlaps with forest health and resilience and carbon sequestration, trails, wildlife corridors, and things like that, which I'm very passionate about all those things. And acquisition, like Dan said. So I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Surya, do you have anything that you'd like to add for us today?
Yeah, so hi, I'm a high school student, so I haven't really done anything too specific yet, but kind of my entire life I have been like volunteering with different environmental organizations, and over the summer I got to volunteer with King County, or I got to intern with King County Parks, which was a really cool experience. And I think from that it's my passion for community engagement and also like marketing of different environmental issues has grown. So I can definitely help with that, but also things like finding partners. If you're looking for like local partners to like help with different plans, I think I can do that because at my school I've helped my like DECA club find corporate partners and sponsors and such. But yeah, I think those kind of issues I can lend a hand to.
Thank you. And Tom, you're the last one that we haven't heard from yet. Tom, do you have anything to add?
I must be going in reverse alphabetical order. Okay, well, I'm a retired medical device engineer, so my professional experience doesn't align exactly with functions of this board, but I do have other interests. I too am involved with Issaquah Alps Trails Club, so trails are an important thing to me, both recreational and regional. And so, okay, Issaquah is the trailhead city, and promoting and advancing that cause is important to me, but also just coupling in with the ICAP is the connection to the mobility master plan, getting people from point A to point B in town for various purposes, non-recreational purposes, is something we need to really spend some focus on. And there isn't a whole lot of, in terms of the agenda for 2022, that is a little disappointment to me that we're not having more tie-in with transportation related things. We do have the electric vehicle part of the initiative there, which is good. And Title 18 will have some connections to that too. I don't know where things stand on the mobility master plan, but well, anyway, getting back to the focus here. So that's an area of interest to me. Transportation, multimodal transportation on feet and bicycle, including electric bikes, I believe is an important element of, should be an important element of the plan for the city of Issaquah moving forward to get people through town without the use of a car. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. So thank you all for participating in this little exercise. I hope that it has provided Stacy with some information that she was looking for regarding the board. And I'm sure she'll get to know us better as we move along and do more formal introductions in May when there's a potentially new board and new chair. And with that, I'm going to conclude the agenda items for tonight and move on to reports. And Stacy, do you have any reports for us tonight?
Great, thanks, Nancy. Yeah, just a few updates. Maybe just to building off of Tom's last comment, we're doing interviews for a new transportation planner this week. So I'm hoping after that person's on board, I have some conversations with them, maybe there'll be some more transportation items to build into our agenda. So great, just a few updates. As I noted earlier in the presentation, my hope is during this time, each meeting, I'll be providing you an update on different ICAP implementation activities. So some of the other updates I have tonight is that the timeline for elections for positions that end in 2022, I believe we have 4 positions that will be up this year. And just a reminder that current members can apply again. We don't yet have the details on the timeline for that process, but I was informed that that will be coming out in January. So please keep an eye out for that if your position is up this year, and we can touch more on that in February. There were 2 groups that reached out to me and asked that I pass information along to the board they are looking for volunteers. One is the Tilt Alliance. They are recruiting for 2022 Soil and Water Stewardship Program. And the other is FISH is looking for new board members and volunteers. If you're interested in either of those, feel free to reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with those contacts. Update on in-person meetings. Latest information I heard is that it will probably be a couple of months or longer now due to the Omicron variant. I know this setting is not ideal for all of us, but expect that we will be here for at least a few more months. If you have ideas on how to improve the process, improve engagement of the board, do reach out to me to share those ideas, and we'll work towards trying to make this forum as kind to us as possible. I did want to just remind folks that there is the People for Climate Action meeting tomorrow evening where they've invited King County to speak. So far, I've only heard from Jamie and then myself. I am also planning to attend. If others are interested, please do let me know tomorrow. We do need to make sure we don't have a quorum at that presentation. And Jamie or myself can share, or if anyone else does attend, Jamie, we can share what happens at that meeting during our February meeting. I did want to just recognize too that the mayor was awarded a honorable mention for small cities through a Climate Protection Award from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and that was for the passage of the EV ordinance, which I know this board had quite a hand in. She was part of a national webinar to talk about the ordinance. We also got to hear from other small cities around the country, which was very inspiring to hear what they are all doing. And then the last item is I did want to just flag a couple of our upcoming meetings. February 24th, as folks noted earlier, that will be a joint PPC meeting with, joint meeting with PPC to talk about Title 18. It will be a public hearing. The information for review is planned to be distributed 1 month in advance of the meeting. I did talk to staff this week about techniques we can use to make sure that the environmental board really has a voice at that meeting, as I know that's been a concern with past joint meetings. So we'll be working on some strategies for that next joint meeting in February. The other one I did want to just flag is the March meeting. It looks like that now will be a joint meeting with PPC as well, although with the environmental board as host. That's to provide input into the stormwater, surface water, wastewater plans. There is potential that meeting might go a little bit long. I'll be working with public works staff to see how much time they need, but just since it will be a joint meeting, we're anticipating going a little bit long. So I will not, I will try and keep that from happening at future meetings, but did want to just flag that for the March meeting. There's potential for it to go a little bit long. That is all I had, Nancy. Thank you. Hand it back to you.
Thank you. And with that, is there any other business or announcements from Stacy or for anyone else on the board? Seeing none, at this point, I want to say welcome to 2022. Thank you for all your active participation tonight. And the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.